Peace, peace. What's happening, y'all? Peace. Come on in here. Come on in. Come on in. Come on in. Come on in. Like the live, share the live. Damn, boy, where everybody at? TikTok, boy, y'all be playing. TikTok be playing with people content, boy. That shit is not cool at all. Like, damn. 13,000 supporters and only 2 folks see my live. That's crazy. Shout out to y'all that's in here though. We gonna let it sit for a little bit. See if anybody else stumble in here. Peace. What's happening? What's happening? OGJD, what's happening? Saying this holistic shadow in the building. Peace, y'all. Now come on in, like the live, share the live. Y'all know that we on a slow burn account, so just hang in there. You know why a lot of people, why people come in. This is what we're gonna be reading from today. What's happening, Coco? Is the sound good? Can y'all hear me? We good? How we all doing today? How y'all day was? How y'all day was? I should remove my background and shit. I'm saying, Mr. Fresh, peace. Y'all just hang in there. I promise that we're gonna get started with our live. Y'all know TikTok got me on that slow burner. Triple back up. Yeah, you already know. You already know how we get down. You know how TikTok get down, man. GMB was in there. Oh, that ain't GMB. That's OGJD was in there. Peace. Like the live, share the live for me. Let me share it to Facebook real quick. Then I'll be done sharing. I'm saying it, Capri. Peace. We're gonna get started in a second, y'all. I promise y'all. So we're gonna be talking about Anacalypsis today. Anacalypsis in America. You know, we're gonna be reading from my book that I just dropped today. You know, if y'all didn't know, I just dropped another book today. It's book number 2. The link is in the bio. Check it out. But we're gonna be talking about Anacalypsis in America. Alright, the word Anacalypsis just means unreveal or unveil. Okay? Anacalypsis only means to unveil or revelation. So we're gonna be talking about the Anacalypsis in America. The unveiling of America. So I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Like the live, share the live. We're gonna get started in just a second. Let me get this paper plate that my sister would. Is my sound good? The sound straight? Background good? Sound good? Cool. Cool. We're gonna get started in just a second. Y'all day been good? How y'all day been? How work been? How your day been? Everything been smooth? Y'all been learning? Y'all been chilling? Good so far. That's what's up. GMB was in it. Peace. Said chilling. Cool. Roll it if y'all got it. We about to get started. My favorite, Mr. Fresh. That's my favorite right there. You already know what it is. But shout out to everybody that's in here. Like the live, share the live. 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 We about to get into some shit. Alright, let's go ahead and get into it. I don't want to keep y'all waiting too long. Those who roll in, they roll in. We'll fill them in. You know what I'm saying? What's that in Dallas? Peace. We'll fill them in and everything like that. But today we are reading from my book, Anacalypsis in America. This is the second book that I just released. It's on my profile, link in the bio and everything like that. So if y'all want to check it out, make sure. But we're going to read a little bit in it just so y'all can see what we talking about. This is more of a history ordeal than psyops, right? So shout out to everybody that's in here. So Anacalypsis, the unveiling of hidden origins, the prologue, the forgotten truth of the people reborn. Okay, the forgotten truth of the people reborn. So memory is not just a relic. It is technology encoded in the blood, waiting to be activated, right? Memory is not just a relic. It is technology encoded in the blood, waiting to be activated. Excuse me, okay? The word Anacalypsis is a term of deep mystery and ancient echo from the Greek word Anacalyptis, meaning unveiling or disclosure or revelation. It arises from ana, meaning up, again, or back, and klypto, meaning to cover, conceal, or veil. At its root, it speaks of exposure, the lifting of a sacred curtain, cloaking forbidden truths. Alright? Cloaking forbidden truths. In the classical world, Anacalypsis was a ritual movement, a revelation, a ceremonial unveiling of hidden knowledge. Often during temple rites, when the image of the divine was revealed only to the initiated. It was the climax of the mystery schools, the moment of sacred, the moment the sacred was no longer obscured. All right? So what was hidden is no longer hidden. It's no longer obscured. Okay? It's no longer obscured. Alright. So now, continuing on, it is no coincidence that when this word became the title of Godfrey Higgins' suppressed 19th century work, right? The book that I be reading to y'all, Anacalypsis Volume 1, Anacalypsis Volume 2. It is no coincidence then that this word became the title of Godfrey Higgins' suppressed 19th century work, Anacalypsis. An inquiry into the origins of languages and nations and religions. A book that dared to connect the ancient civilizations, priesthood, and spiritual systems of the world under a shared melanated origin. What's that in VOC? What's good? All right. So he said that this book, right there, right? So he said that this book, right there, my whole phone just went back to the home page. My bad, y'all. For real, my whole phone just kicked me to the home page. That shit crazy. Shout out to everybody that's in here, though. I appreciate y'all. That's why some people say the veil has been lifted. Yeah. That's exactly why people say that the veil has been lifted fast. Look at that, Lola. What's happening, Lola? My bad. So let's get back to it. I'm sorry. Before I got kicked out of my own live. So it says the Anacalypsis, right? It is no coincidence then that this word became the title of Godfrey Higgins' suppressed 19th century work. Anacalypsis, an inquiry into the origins of language, nations, and religions. A book that dared to connect the ancient civilizations and priesthoods and spiritual systems of the world under a shared melanated origin. Alright, and we know because we done read from Anacalypsis 1, Anacalypsis 2. The book teaches us about the Negro Buddha and etc. etc. So a book buried beneath censorship, sabotaged by academia, right? They say that this book, the Anacalypsis book, right, 1 and 2, the one I be reading to y'all, right, Negro Buddha, right? It say that this book was buried beneath censorship, sabotaged by academia, feared by religion, and yet it whispers survives, waiting for a new generation to heed its call. We are that generation, right? We are that generation. Dallas in the building, right? They say yet its whisper survives, waiting for a new generation to hear its call. All right. What the hell? These boys playing with my live. Alright, can y'all still hear me? We good? What's happening, CJ? What's happening, him? Peace. Y'all can still hear me? For those who's coming in, we are reading. We are reading from the book I just dropped today. Alright, for those who's joining us, just to fill y'all in, we're reading from the book I dropped today, Anacalypsis in America, The Suppressed History of Melanated People. Hey, I appreciate that, him. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. And I got 2 of them out there now. Alright. Right, the Anacalypsis of America, Part 1, Reclaiming Our Consciousness. So, we reading from the Anacalypsis. Hey, I appreciate that. Facts, for real. Appreciate that. So, we reading from the Anacalypsis. So, peep game. So, it says that it is a sacred process of movement. Right? It is more than just a book. It is a sacred process of movement. Right? A movement. An act of ancestral awakening. Appreciate the gifts. Thank you. Yeah, Lola, I just dropped it today. Alright. So this unveiling speaks directly to those long cast into historical shadows. The Black Americans of indigenous descent whose mislabeled Negro, whose true tribal names and nations were erased by paper genocide, WAR, in silence. Just like they trying to silence us today, right? What's that, girly girl? It is the rebirth of memory for those called African, right? Misnomered African, right? Quotation marks. Through their bloodline, posts with the rhythms of Muskogee, Yamasee, Wichita, and the Olmec ancestors. Ah, yeah, I got you. I'll send it to you. Daughters of the Most High, I got you. All right. We talking about the Anacalypsis. Anacalypsis, remember, it means to unveil or the unveiling. Revelations. So we talking about the Anacalypsis in America, the unveiling in America, the revelation in America, right? And it says it is the rebirth of memory for those so-called Africans through their bloodline pulse with the rhythms of Muskogee, Yamasee, Wichita, and Olmec ancestors. It is the re-emergence of the Moors, the dark-skinned mathematicians, navigators, healers, and master builders who once illuminated the darkened Europe, only to be betrayed, enslaved, and renamed. To understand Anacalypsis is to understand that Black Americans are not a people without history. They are a people whose history has been deliberately veiled. All right? To understand Anacalypsis is to understand that Black Americans are not a people without a history. They are a people whose history has been deliberately veiled. All right? A legacy scattered, a memory reborn. The veiling or the unveiling also traces the exiled Iberian bloodlines of the Sephardic Jews, right? See, when we talk about unveiling in America, Anacalypsis in America, it's not just about American Indians. I'm trying to tell you, there's a bigger picture here. And once we all can put our differences to the side, we can understand a bigger picture. But this is something that's not going to be understood, you know what I'm saying, so easily. But it's okay, though. It's okay. What's happening, True Blood? All right. Y'all can still hear me? Y'all with me? The live straight? We still smooth? Okay, cool. I just want to make sure that we good. Y'all know how TikTok be doing me. You feel me? If y'all can, like the live, share the live for me. You know, share it to the Telegram. What's happening, Singing Bear? Like the live, share the live. If you in the Telegram, share it to the Telegram. Let's keep digging. We talking about the Anacalypsis in America, right? The Anacalypsis in America. So, a legacy that's scattered and a memory reborn. This unveiling also traces, right? Because we already unveiled the indigenous descent, right? Up top, we already unveiled the indigenous descent, right? So now we about to unveil traces of the exiled Iberian bloodlines of the Sephardics, those who lived as Moors. Remember what I always taught y'all. From day one, I always taught y'all, Moors and Sephardic Jews are the same people. Only thing that separates them is their religion. See, people think religion is a nationality, and it's not. And that's what confuses people, right? These are the same people. One is just Judaic, and the other one became Muslim. But this is why in history, everywhere you see the Sephardics, you'll see the Moors. Everywhere you see the Moors, you see the Sephardics. That's because they're brothers. They're the same people. They're the same lineage, right? What's happening, Rich Soul? They're the same lineage, right? So the unveiling also traces the exiled Iberian bloodlines of the Sephardics, those who once lived as Moors and Israelites in Spain and Portugal, right? They lived as Moors and Israelites, but in reality, these were Sephardic, Sephardite, Iberian. Okay? Y'all with me so far? Did my live just freeze? Mic check 1 2 1 2. We good? Okay, we good on your end. So listen, good. Mr. Fresh, good. Okay, I'm just making sure we good. It looked like it froze for a minute. So, unveiling also traced the exiled Iberian bloodlines of the Sephardic, those who once lived as Moors and Israelites in Spain and Portugal. Before the Inquisition shattered their lineages, right? Before the Inquisition shattered their lineages and scattered their seeds across the Atlantic, in the New World, many of these Sephardisms were classified and suppressed under the same colonial caste system that erased both the so-called African and the indigenous. But their essence survived in their songs, their surnames, in secret rites, in whispers, in history, right? Their surnames. Some of us got Sephardic Jew surnames and don't even know it. Everybody's name is an American Indian. I know that that's a long-running narrative on this app, but everybody's last name is not American Indian. Some of us actually do have Sephardic Jew names. Some of us actually do have Moorish Arabic names. You know what I'm saying? It ain't just always indigenous. But we also have to remember that the Sephardites or the Sephardics, aka Moors, they were integrated, or we adopt a lot of them into our tribe. They married our people. We had kids. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's part of history. Whether people want to acknowledge it or not, that is part of history. It happened, right? So some of these folks became part of the tribe through marriage, through children, through treaty. All right, so this is why the three main identities and nationalities they don't want black Americans to claim. They don't want you to claim Sephardic. They don't want you to claim so-called Moor. And they sure as hell don't want you to claim indigenous. These three identities, they don't want you to claim because it's true. It's true. The European and the African that they say that so-called black Americans have, right? The European and the African, those are Sephardics and Moors. I'm being all the way real with you. They Sephardics, they Moors. Some of us got Irish, Scottish. But remember that the Sephardics was over there in Ireland as well. They were called Chaldees, right? Or the Chaldees, right? You know, Afrashad and all of them. So the Druids, you know, a lot of them was Sephardic as well too. So a lot of us have Sephardic and Moor and indigenous ancestry, believe it or not. But we'll put a pin in that and touch on it a little bit later. What's happening, Mad Facts? We'll put a pin in it. So, in secret rites and whispers of history, all right, flipping the page of histories. Thus, Anacalypsis become more than a revelation, right? Anacalypsis become more than a revelation. It is a restoration. It is the long-awaited rejoining of a spiritual, cultural, and genealogical chain, binding the Moor, the American Indian, and the Sephardic, and the so-called Negro, because, you know, I mean, they all Negro, dodge the hijack, right? Sometimes you got to dodge your own hijack, right? Together in one profound legacy, right? It is the long-awaited rejoining of spiritual, long-awaited rejoining, right? Rejoining. The reason why I say rejoining, because if you have Sephardic Jew, if you have Moor, and if you have American Indian, are you really mixed? I'm asking y'all this question right now. You know, kind of got to get some engagement because TikTok be playing with me. You know, that helps with the algorithm as well too. You know, those who can engage. But if you have Sephardic, Moor, and American Indian, are you really mixed? What's that in red line? Are you really mixed? From all the histories and all the books that we done read throughout these 6 years, 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, are they really mixed? GMB say, I say no. I say no too. You know what I'm saying? I say no too. I say that you're not mixed. Because all three of these are the same people in history. All three are the same people in history. Nope, closest to the pure bloods. Exactly. We are closest to the pure bloods. I see y'all. What's happening, Coco? I don't know if I spoke. I ain't see you come in. Peace, peace. See, I don't think so either. Right. So, you're not really mixed. Because again, these are the same people. From the same stock. But we gonna get there. Hang in. Right? So, it is the long-awaited rejoining of a spiritual, cultural, and genealogical chain. Genealogical chain. Not DNA test. Not 23andMe. Genealogical chain. Binding the Moor, the American Indian, the Sephardic, together in one profound legacy. A legacy fragmented through ethnocide, disguised as religion, reclassification imposed through colonial law, psychological warfare under MK programs, memory suppression through boarding schools and doctrines, economic disinheritance through systematic manipulations. These is how you fragment a legacy and separate a people who was once one in the beginning. What's that nigga at? Right? Who was once one in the beginning. Alright. So now, because of this legacy that's been fragmented, the descendants of 2025 is spending too much time arguing with each other and not enough time building with each other. I'm going to say that again. And the descendants of this bind chain, of genealogical chain, is spending too much time arguing and debating with each other instead of coming together and building with each other for the kids, for the youths, for our economy. But we'll get there though. We'll get there. We'll get there. Shout out to everybody that's in the hallway too. So now, a legacy fragmented is dropped down. So now this is a sacred return, right? So when we talk about this rejoining of a spiritual, cultural, and genealogical chain that's binding all three together because they're the same people, this is a sacred return, right? A sacred return. Some of the Israelites call it Deuteronomy, right? The Israelites on the corner be like, Deuteronomy. But a lot of them don't know that Deuteronomy was America. And the Sephardites and the Moors that already had their sacred return. Alright? Peep gang. Don't let it go over your head. The scroll is being unrolled. The veil is lifting. And the hidden story of the melanated peoples in America is re-emerging. Whole, dignified. Alright? You know it be folks inside the hallway. You already know. You know, they folk be scared to come in. It's cool. I shout them out too. So in the hidden story of the melanated peoples in America is re-emerging, whole, dignified, and unbroken. But make no mistake, this is not a history that can be learned passively, right? This is not a history that can be learned passively. That's why I don't sugarcoat shit and I don't try to hold people's hand, because you can't learn this passively. We got shit to do, right? It must be remembered and it must be felt. It must be resurrected from the cellular level to the soul. All right? From the cellular level to the soul. You gotta remember. You gotta remember who you are. Remember who you are, right? So now that we covered that, right? So now we covered the introduction, right? This is the Anacalypsis in America. This is the unveiling in America, right? This is the revelations in America that has been covered up for so many years, right? Through a chain of bind legacy, genealogical legacy of the Moor, the American Indian, and the Sephardi, right? So now we understand that part, right? We need to take this to the world court. Hey, facts. What's happening, Red Line? Hey, what's happening, Child of the Soul? Peace, peace. Right? So now we understand that, right? So how American Indian identity was undermined in the civil rights movement hijacked, which is a question everybody should be asking at this point once you get enough knowledge. How American Indian identity was undermined in the civil rights movement hijacked. Well, first you got to start all the way back with Walter Plecker. Golly, what, the 1920s, Los? Yeah, because everything is connected, right? By circus performers, that too. But everything is connected in this, right? One chain of events set off other chains of events. And I'm going to break it down to you. For those who ain't never heard me break it down. What's happening, Pat? Pat in the building. And I'm going to break it down for you, right? So, but first we got to start with Walter Plecker, though. Right, Miss Hardy? What's happening? So, number one, Walter Plecker's reclassifications, 1920s to 1947. What he did as Virginia's first register of vital statistics, Walter Plecker enforced the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, reclassifying all peoples as either white or colored, intentionally erasing American Indian identity, especially those with mixed heritage, right? Especially those with mixed heritage, right? Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, especially those of mixed heritage. But it ain't the mixed heritage that you think. See, we ain't talking about YT man and, you know, the mainstream. Yeah, we getting down to the nitty gritty with some real. You feel me? So, especially those of mixed heritage. The effects on the American Indians of Sephardic and Moorish descent, right? That's your European/African ancestors that they be lying about. Right? They want you to think that the European is the YT man. They want you to think the African is the African. You know what I'm saying? And they want you to think that the so-called Indian is the Siberian. But that is not true at all. That is so far from actual history. Nah, for real. That is so far from actual history. When you break down history, when you go through the books, the genealogical records, the census records, when you go through so-called ship logs of the Jacobites, when you go through the book called Blackness in the Caribbeans, and you learn what a Ladino is, which is an El Negro/Sephardi European, right? Because they from the Iberia, European, right? Then you can start to understand, hold on, wait a minute. Okay, so if the Sephardis are the European and they're Latinos, El Negros, the Moor is the so-called African because, you know, North Africa. But at this time, the Iberian in North Africa was one, and that was called Africa during the slave trade. See, that's what people's not really understanding. What's saying that, Sam? See, that's what people's not understanding about this whole narrative. When you talk about 1600s, first of all, when you talk about 1492, 15, 16, 1700s, so-called Africa, or the Africa, was North Africa to the Iberian, literally, and there's maps about that. So when they were snatching so-called Africans, or these Iberians, or these Sephardis and Moors, Berbers, Tuaregs, that's who they was grabbing from the west part of so-called Africa, which is Northwest Africa, Mauritania, into the Iberia, right? Because it is connected to the exile of the Sephardic Jews and Moors, right? The Sephardic Jews and Moors, all these are Negroes. They get kicked out of the Iberia. Some of them went to South France. Some of them went back down to, you know, Africa with their cousins and shit like that in North Africa, Mauritania, Algiers, Morocco, even Egypt a little bit, right? So when these colonizers was coming, they was just grabbing them from the coast and just was like, oh yeah, these some Africans. Oh yeah, these are West Africans. Oh yeah, these is. So they was misnomering and reclassifying already during the Inquisition, right? So this is what we got to understand. So this is why I like teaching from that book called Blackness in the Caribbeans, archives.org. It teaches you what a Ladino is, right? All right, but we're going to keep going, though. We're going to keep going. So peak game, though. Peak game. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. So, especially those with mixed heritage. Effects on American Indians of Sephardic or Moorish descent. Right? That's that mixed heritage that they talking about, right? American Indians of Sephardic and Moorish descent, right? Many from long-standing tribal communities, right? So even when these American Indians are mixed with Sephardites or Moors, they are still inside tribal communities because all three of these people are the same damn people. But anyways, they still part of these tribal communities, of course, right? So many from long-standing tribal communities, particularly with Sephardic or Moorish ancestry, they were also reclassified as colored. Even the Sephardic and the Moors were reclassified as colored, severing their documented identity, right? So when American Indians got reclassified, it severed our sovereignty to the land and our inheritance and disenfranchised us. When the Sephardics and the Moors got reclassified, it severed their documented identity, right? This made it difficult to claim tribal lands or maintain sovereign recognition. How is this connected to the civil rights? Well, their struggle was reframed as a racial issue instead of a sovereignty issue. Because I don't know if a lot of y'all noticed that, but when the civil rights first began, it was about sovereignty, right? We are not second-class citizens. We are Americans. First-class citizens. We are Americans. Y'all keep trying to make us second-class citizens, and we built the country, right? It was about sovereignty. In the middle, it got hijacked and became a racial issue, right? So the state erased tribal identities by force, pushing them into racialized systems that denied cultural and political continuity, right? So that's Walter Plecker, 1920s, 1940s, right there. Boom. All of that trickles down, right? It even shows y'all Walter Plecker's reclassification affected the civil rights movement, right? So boom, it's right there, right? Peace, what's happening, my bro? So now, from 1920s to 1947, that's what we just covered. So now, 3 years later, we get to the termination policy in 1950s. All right, 3 years later, we get to the termination policy in 1950s. After you reclassify the American Indian, the Sephardic, and the Moor, you get to the termination policy of 1950, 3 years later. So what is this termination policy? A lot of people probably be wondering because they never heard it, right? It's a federal policy designed to terminate the legal statuses of tribes, ending their sovereign relationship with the U.S. government, right? The impact that it had is that over 100 tribes lost federal recognition, right? And these are black Indians. Land was sold and tribal governments dismantled. All right, these are so-called black Indians, right? As y'all can see, you can probably get an idea how it's leading up to the so-called civil rights movement. And it's crazy because they don't even teach it like this. They don't even teach you, man. Well, of course they're not going to teach you. I mean, they erased your identity, so why would I teach you, right? But, man, they don't even teach you, man. Well, of course they're not going to teach you. I mean, they erased your identity, so why would I teach you, right? But, man, gang. But, man, gang. P-gang. So how is this linked to the civil rights? Well, what's that, Crystal? So how is this linked to civil rights? Well, marketed using equal rights, right, rhetoric, to justify forced Hold on, y'all, real quick. Hold on. Hold on. All right. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Can y'all hear me? Are we good? Are we good now? Live straight, sound good, background cool. Y'all let me know. Like the live, share the live for me. Said yes. Okay, cool. What's happening, Swarthy? Peace. Y'all like the live, share the live for me. Y'all know I'm on TikTok, smoke shadow beam. Try not to put that on myself, but it's hard not to believe it. What's happening, Ant? Peace. Peace. It's hard not to believe it. What's happening, Ant? Peace. Peace. Alright, so let's get back to it though, right? So what we just broke down, how all of these events is connected, right? From the Walter Plicker 1920s, 1947, termination policy, 1950s. Now we're getting into the Relocation Act of 1956, right? Y'all see how they all connected, right? 47, 50, and 56. 4 years later, it's the 60s. You know what I'm saying? So it's all connected, and you can tell that they talking about literally Black Americans. You know what I'm saying? So peak game. Shout out to everybody that's in here. If we still good, y'all let me know. Or y'all in. If we still good. Say good, Ant. Good, OG. Everybody else is good for y'all? I don't know why I did that. I just cracked the window. Said OG said it's good. Anthony said it's good. Anybody else? Is the live good for anybody else? It's good for you, Gus, Mr. Fresh? Okay. Tannin Dream, Seer, Peace, Flow, what's good? So let's get back to it though. Let me get some water real quick. Alright. So now we get into the relocation act. So when you go from Walter-Plecker 1920s, 1947, and you get into the termination policy of 1950s, when you get done with that, we're going into the Indian Relocation Act now, right? So we just reclassified you, disenfranchised you, detribalized you. They detribalized you and everything like that, right? So the Indian Relocation Act of 1956, what it is, it's another federal program encouraging, often coercing American Indians to move to the cities, right? This was a federal program often coercing American Indians to move to the cities from their rural areas. This is still part of the land grab. So broken promises of jobs and housing, fragmented communities, and cultural loss, it was the outcome of this Indian Relocation Act. This is should start sound familiar to you. So how does this overlap with the civil rights, which will be like 4 years later? So urban American Indians, who is these urban American Indians? Anybody? If y'all can hear me, the live still good. Who is these urban American Indians? Because we know that those are reservation Indians because they live on reservations. Those are reservational Indians. So if those are reservational Indians and people only know about the reservational Indians, and somehow people think that you have to be on a reservation to be an Indian, ironically from what we're reading, who is these urban Indians who got relocated, got reclassified, got terminated? Broken promises of jobs and housing, fragmented communities, right? The projects and cultural loss, right? So the civil rights overlap and connection to this. What's that in bit, Rico? So the civil rights overlap and connection. Urban American Indians found common ground with other marginalized groups, right? Sephardics, Moors, right? States refused to recognize their unique status. And they still do. Folding them into a generic minority narrative, calling them black people. Alright? So from this Indian Relocation Act of 1950, it brings you down to the urbanization of the American Indians. By the 1960s, most American Indians lived in cities. Excuse me, you said who? Urbanization of American Indians. Excuse me, you said what again? You said by 1960s, most American Indians lived in the cities and not the reservations? Then who is these American Indians that lives in the urbans, in the cities? And they say most American Indians live in cities. Okay. So movements like Red Power and AIM emerge, right? Because they try to do the Red Power after so-called Black Power, right? Excuse me. All right. So focusing on land and treaty rights. Focusing on land and treaty rights. The civil rights connection to this urbanization of American Indians, it paralleled so-called Black Power, but rooted in sovereignty, right? Paralleled Black Power, but rooted in sovereignty. Excluded from the civil rights narrative, which emphasizes assimilation over resistance. The civil rights narrative emphasizes assimilation over resistance. They don't tell you about the people who resisted assimilation, right? A lot of people that was against integration. A lot of our people who still wanted to stay segregated, right? But they don't tell you that side. They only tell you the assimilation side over the resistance side, right? Because, you know, it'll pretty much tell you who you are once you start learning the resistance side. So how the civil rights movement was hijacked, right? Because we broke down all of this, and this was the original so-called Indian civil rights movement right before it got hijacked. So now we about to get into how it got hijacked, right? Y'all good? Y'all straight? We need a breather or anything? Okay, cool. Shout out to everybody that's in here. How was the civil rights movement hijacked? So first you have to divide and neutralize. All right? You got to divide and neutralize. I know y'all used to hearing divide and conquer. Well, in this case, you got to divide and neutralize. Right? Divide and neutralize, which is what you're seeing right now. Right? So force American Indians of Sephardic and Moorish descent into a colored status. Prevent unified resistance by erasing distinct histories. Okay? So not only are we going to throw American Indians inside colored, but we also going to throw, you know, the American Indians with the Sephardic and the Moorish, right? The so-called mulatto, right? Because European Indian mulatto, right? So, you know, colored status, right? Prevented unified resistance by erasing distinct histories, meaning because we don't know that the American Indian, the Moor, and the Sephardi are the same people. We don't know that they the same people because they was erasing distinct histories. They was being specific with the history that they erased and rewrote. All right. What's that, Adrian? Peace. All right. Okay, so hijacking the civil rights. Use so-called equal rights to eliminate tribal sovereignty. Use so-called equal rights to eliminate tribal sovereignty. Reframe collective demands as personal rights. Reframe collective demands as personal rights. Strategic erasure comes next after the hijack of the civil rights, and that deals with COINTEL, right? Destabilized movements. But at this time, ironically, the only movements that they was destabilizing was ours, American Indian. Suppress historical memory of Sephardi and Moorish tribal ties. So now people don't know that a lot of Sephardic and Moorish do have tribal ties because, anyways, we'll get into that later on. Alright, so suppress historical memory of Sephardic and Moorish tribal ties to the American Indians, same people. Cultural displacement, sovereignty replaced with token inclusion, right? Cultural displacement, after you do strategic erasure, now you do cultural displacement. Sovereignty replaced with token inclusion. Sovereignty replaced with token inclusion. American Indians boxed into the minority identity and stripped of their nationhood. So who is the people on the reservations? Because when we talk about American Indian history, it is a known fact that the American Indians had their identity stripped. The people that's calling us Wabos aren't acting like a people who had their identity stripped. That's because they was on the reservations at this time. They have been on the reservation since the 1800s. They don't know this shit. They only know what's told to them on TV and news and shit. They don't know this part in history. They try to tell you your history, but they don't know this shit in history. Who is these urban Indians? Who is these Indians right here? What's that, NTR? Who is these Indians? So American Indians boxed into a minority identity, stripped of their nationhood. So a summary table of everything, right? Just get a quick summary of tables, right? You got policy, events, target outcomes, linked to civil rights, and hijacking strategy, right? To run it down, Plecker's reclassification led to erased identities, which led to blurred race and nation lines in the civil rights. And the hijacking strategy is to reduce tribes to race. What's that in Pooch? Right? To reduce tribes to race. The termination policy that came right after Walter Plecker's, right? It was made to dismantle sovereignty. Okay? Which is the outcome. The link to the civil rights is the so-called equal rights equals assimilation, integration. Right? So your whole life, when they showed you the civil rights movement, they were showing you American Indians being assimilated to YT society, just like how they say it in history. And it didn't even happen that long ago, like they try to tell you. Right? But it's left out. So now, the whole hijacking strategy of the outcome is eliminated treaty rights. Because of the civil rights, and it was in human rights, it eliminated a lot of treaty rights. Because we wasn't supposed to be fighting for civil rights. We were supposed to be fighting for human rights. And that's what we was fighting for in the beginning. And that's what we was fighting for in the beginning. But because it got hijacked, because the human right movement of American Indians, who was being displaced, got hijacked, it eliminated our treaty rights. Right? So now, after the termination policy, you deal with the Relocation Act. Right? Relocation Act happened 6 years after the termination policy, which happened 3 years after the Walter Plecker reclassification. Right? It's all connected to you and me in history that's not being told and covered up. So the Relocation Act, the targeted outcome of the Relocation Act was urban displacement. When you go research the word urban, who face pops up, y'all? Right now, if you Google pretendian, we know who pop up. But if you Google urban, who pop up in urban? And what is urban culture? Okay, so who is these Indians that was displaced into urban areas during the Relocation Act of 1956? And because of this, the link to the civil rights is that it created a shared struggle, right? The hijacking strategy is that it minoritized tribal concerns, okay? That's the hijack. So now, after the Relocation Act and these American Indians is urban displacement. What's happening, lady? Right? So after the Relocation Act and the urban displacement going on, now you're dealing with the urbanization of American Indians. What's happening, Zah? Right? Now you're dealing with the urbanization of American Indians. One more time. When you think urban, who comes to mind? I gotta say it so we can get it in our heads. When you say urban, if we type in urban, when you say urban, who comes to mind? What is urban culture? Right? What is urban culture? Is what hip hop, R&B, jazz, blues, dance of all type of footwork? The way that we dress, from the zoot suits to the baggy clothes to the Gucci and the belt buckle and the Jordans, right? Urban wear, right? Urban Indians. The Timbs, right? Urban Indians, right? Urban Indians. Who is these urban Indians? Because the Indians that call us Wabos live on reservations. And they've been living on reservations since the 1800s. So we're not talking about them. Obviously, they're not urban Indians. They're rural reservation Indians. So who is these urban Indians? Because I ain't never seen a person... We ain't gonna go that far. So now, so the urbanization, the targeted outcome of this urbanization of American Indians is to disconnect them from the land, right? That's why they put you in inner cities, to disconnect you from the land, okay? So how is this linked to the civil rights? Urban tribal movements was created from the civil rights. Urban tribal movement. I wonder, would that be the beginning stages of vice lords, Latin kings, growth and development, urban tribal movements? That's exactly what that is. But they are now called gangs. So the hijacking strategy is ignored in black-white binary, right? Ignored in black-white binary. Okay? So the last thing about how the civil rights movement was hijacked, right? The civil rights movement, all right? So we talked about termination. We talked about Walter Plecker, termination policy, relocation act, urbanization. Now we at the meat. The end, the tail end, right? Now we get to the civil rights movement itself. The targeted outcome was to focus on individuals. What's happening now, Ethan? Right? The targeted outcome was to focus on individuals in that tribe. How is this linked to the civil rights? Even though we talking about the civil rights movement, it was used as a cover for control. The civil rights movement was used as a cover for control because it was a smoke screen for land grabs. So the hijacking strategy, or the outcome of all of this, is to shift focus from sovereignty. Shift the focus from sovereignty. That's why people don't know what sovereignty is. Walk up to any average person, be like, what is sovereignty? They're like, man, what the fuck you talking about? They shift the focus from sovereignty. Sovereignty is linked to human rights. Human rights is linked to indigenous rights. This is why they had to work so hard to destroy your history and your identity. Because in reality, they're not supposed to be doing this to you. They are they are doing tyranny. Because they're not supposed to do what they're doing to us. Not on our own soil. Right? But it gets overlooked because our people think they're from Africa. And they think everything is happening to them because they're African. But our people don't even know that most Africans are classified as white when they come over here. And I ain't never seen a 5-0 whoop up on an African in the media broadcasted. Today on Channel 12 News, police officer beat up Zamunda. Halibibi Darida. Tragedy. I ain't never seen it. And you ain't never gonna see it. Because they know the difference. They know an African when they see one, and they know an indigenous black American when they see one. They've been doing this for too long not to know. They the ones that did it to you in the first place. What's that in 216? You know what I'm saying? All right. All right. Let's get into it. What's happening, K-Real? Peace, peace. So now, let's dive in it a little bit deeper, right? Because I just wanted to show y'all how everything connected, right? So let's dive in it a little bit deeper because a lot of people don't really know too much about Sephardi or Moors. All we talk is about American Indians, but you got to know all three because it's all connected. Like we talked about in the beginning, it's all connected, right? So Moors, Sephardics, and Negro Indians, a unified culture and a divided empire. Sephardim, yeah, Iberian, right? We talking about Moors, Black Jews, and Negro Indians, a unified culture and people, but a divided empire. Same people, different empire is what that means. Same people, different empire. So the core thesis, the Moors, Black Jews, and the indigenous Americans, especially those identified as Negro Indians, were interconnected spiritually, tribally, and what the fuck? Hold on, my bad. My eyes got blurry real quick. I thought I was tripping. My bad. Let's start over. So the core thesis is the Moors, the Sephardites or the Black Jews, and the indigenous Americans, especially those identified as Negro Indians, were interconnected spiritually, tribally, right? They were migratory people who shared Semitic and North African and indigenous American history and heritage. Colonial systems fractured their identities through the forced renaming, the exile, and the assimilation. Today's so-called African American population carries the genetic and cultural legacy of all three. See? What's that name, Elohim? See? Now you know how to read. See, now you know how to read through the bullshit. So-called African Americans are European, African, and a little bit American Indian. Read through the bullshit. The European and the African is the same person. Sephardic, Jew, and Moors are the same people. One is just Muslim, the other one is Judaic. Right? Before the ones was Muslim, they were Judaic before the forced conversion of, the Arab invasion and the Mongol invasion, and Islam and all of that started happening, or whatever the case may be, right? So a corrupt version of Islam started taking over, right? And notice I said a corrupt version of Islam because there's, what a lot of people don't know, there's two versions of Islam, right? You have an original Islam, which just means spirit. And what I mean by original is that they acknowledge that Allah is actually Alat, the goddess, right? But because of Roman patriarchness, they change Alat, who is your goddess, sun goddess, changed her into a him and called him Allah, God, right? So that's what I mean, but you have to dig deep to understand that. I'm telling you, I ain't, I'm gonna tell you a joke, but I ain't gonna tell you no bullshit. So peep game though, we gonna keep going. So, yep. Well, most of your sun gods were originally sun goddesses, and the roles was flipped. Real talk. The roles already got flipped a long time ago. People be talking about this gender roles. People don't even know they roles no more in the Matrix. For real. You only know what religion and society told you. But in reality, before they conquered you, the women was the sun, because the sun is viewed as feminine. Remember I taught y'all that, right? The sun is viewed as feminine and the moon is viewed as masculine. But they flipped it after they conquered the so-called pagans or indigenous people. Okay, but let's keep going though, right? So these are migratory people who shared Semitic, North African, and indigenous American heritage. Colonial systems fractured their identities through forced renaming, exile, and assimilation, integration, right? We just read integration, right? Today's African American population carries the genetic and cultural legacy of all three. That's what makes our culture so unique. Is it true that Buddha was really a woman? Nah, Buddha Buddha has always been a man. His mama is Maya. Maya is a woman, and the Mayans carry their mother's name of Maya, right? So Buddha and the Mayans is, they brothers or siblings, and their mother is Maya, who is the woman, right? And her mother is Gaia, Mama Earth, because we come from the clay, right? Buddha has always, now Krishna is a different story. When you talk about Krishna could be a female, but at the same time, I did just tell y'all that they did change a lot of our sun goddesses into sun gods. And Buddha is just another sun god. He's the sun in Aries. No, he's the sun in Taurus. And Krishna is the sun in Aries. Right? But since they inverted everything, that theory could become true. I haven't came across nothing that's factual to stick with it, but since we thinking logically, it could be true. But all the books that I know, they always acknowledge him as being a man. So right, and that's one thing exactly when you're dealing with the Hindu gods, the Tibetan gods, a lot of them is known as both as well too. But also remember that a lot of those gods come from America. Right? What's happening? They too mad. Peace. So real quick. So what's the spiritual? So the spiritual continualities is that Moors practice Islam infused with Sufism, numerology, and geometric mysticism. Sephardics or Sephardites incorporated the Kabbalistic and the biblical practices, maintaining strict ritual purities in lunar solar holy days, right? The Sabbath, Saturday, right? The Negro Indians, right? The Negro Indians, black Indians, they retained a nature-based spirituality, right? Feathered regalia and sacred dances aligning with the astronomical cycles, right? So they all are connected through astronomy, all right? So they all, from what we read, they all got a piece of the puzzle. So when you bring all three of them together, you get a bigger picture. This is what I kind of been trying to explain to people over the years, right? Everybody got a piece of the puzzle. When you put it together, you get a bigger picture. Every one of these people, the Moors, the Sephardites, and the American Indians, all have a piece of the spirituality that we used to do holy, right? And I mean that in both ways. So let's get into the language and the Semitic roots a little bit, right? So Ladino, right? Remember, Ladino, Judeo-Spanish, right? And remember, Ladino, who are the Ladinos? El Negros, who spoke Judeo-Spanish, right? Or Spanish with Hebrew. And Arabic carried Hebrew and Berber influences, right? And Arabic carried Hebrew and Berber influences. Several American Indian languages, especially Muskogee, Choctaw, and Algonquin, contain Semitic phonic patterns. Tribal naming structures such as Levi, Judah, Pale Ale Creek, Yamasee, and Wichita. That'll be something that we'll dive in a little bit deeper a little bit later. But just understand that. Language connections, right? It's called physiology when you study in languages. So now, historical reclassifications by colonial powers. Colonial records often rename Moors and Sephardites as Negroes or Indians. Ooh. They said colonial records often rename Moors and Sephardites as either Negroes or Indians. That's because they are Indians. Excuse me. It's because they are Indians. But peep game though. So quotes include, right? I'm about to give you a quote. Exactly, same thing, right? I'm about to give you a quote. Right? Because I like to throw references inside the books too. You know what I'm saying? So here's a quote. Include all free Negroes, mulattoes, or Indians shall be taxed and not permitted to vote. North Carolina Act 1835. An Indian is not to be admitted as an Indian if he has one drop of so-called African blood. Right? Virginia Racial Integrity Act 1924. But we just learned what that African blood is, right? Sephardi, Moor. So again, if an American Indian had one drop of Sephardic or Moorish blood, he was a Negro in the color, right? That's that blood quantum, that one drop rule, right? That's how they use that to detribalize you and strip your sovereignty. Right? And we still is suffering that today. All right, so P game. Because you always more Indian, but at the same time, they the same people. So dodge the own hijack, right? Sometimes you got to dodge your own hijack. But we was reading what they was wrote in Virginia, even though these are the same people. We already talked about it. So the evidence of unified identity, all right? What's that, Caddy boy? So evidence of unified identity, right? So cultural similarities in garments, symbols, and rituals, right? Genetic, Black Americans often show 15 to about 40% American Indian and North African ancestry. All right. We know we don't really follow DNA tests for real. But when we doing census records and genealogical, not all of our people, but those Black Americans who are mixed with Sephardic and more. And you know what's crazy is that they'll never tell you that you have North African ancestry because of who it's tied to. They'll just say that you was the African. You know what I'm saying? It's African. But they'll never tell you North African. So peep gang. So Black Americans often show about 15 to 40% Native American / American Indian and North African ancestry. Historically, early European accounts described American Indian as black, tawny, and woolly-haired. Historically, early European accounts described American Indians as black, tawny, and woolly-haired. So if you get an American Indian who is black, tawny, and woolly hair, and you mix them with a Sephardic and a Moor who is also black, tawny, and woolly-haired, what would the children look like? Right? What would the children look like? Okay, here we go. We got a picture right there up top. There we go. We got a picture. And you know what's crazy? What's happening, C3? And you know what's crazy? This is a historical picture that do not depict Native Americans at all. Not the ones that call us Wabo. How do you get a Native American that call us Wabo from this right here? The super black dude is a Sephardic Jew or more, because you can tell by his clothes he's European, right? Spaniard, Portuguese baby. So you can tell he's European. Copper-colored American Indian woman. Look at the baby, right? So if you get a dark-skinned European and you mix it with a copper-colored or dark-skinned American Indian, what the baby gonna look like? The African and the European is the same person. They are Sephardic and Moors. Sephardites, Iberians. Iberia was also considered Africa at that time, Africa. Right? So peep gang. Dodge your own hijack when you be reading some of these books. What's that there, Los? Right? I just wanted to show the picture real quick so you get an idea. So let's get back to it real quick, and then we'll get back to that. So, all right. So now, link to modern Black Americans. What is the link to modern Black Americans with all this? Okay, right? We talking about Indians. We talking about Sephardics. We talking about Moor. You feel me? What is the link to modern Black Americans? Right? Modern, because they like to keep our identities and history and shit hidden, right? So from 1492 onward, expelled Moors and Sephardics, right? They integrated into indigenous communities in the Americas, right? Indigenous communities in the Americas. Reclassification removed their identity over generations. Today's so-called African Americans preserve aspects of Moorish, tribal, and Hebraic traditions via hoodoo. Our surnames, facts. Right? VA hoodoo. They said what? They said today's so-called African Americans, Black Americans, preserve aspects of Moorish, tribal, American Indian, and Hebraic traditions via hoodoo. And what do you mean? Hold on, Los. You taught us that hoodoo was indigenous. I did. And I also taught you that all three of these people, the same people too. Right? You feel me? Yeah. Hold on. You told me Hoodoo was indigenous. Yeah, and I also told y'all three of these people the same people. They all had a puzzle piece they took with them when they left America. The Moors took mathematics and alchemy and pyramid building with them, and they spread it around the world. Sephardites took religion and spirituality and nature and magic work around, right? The Druids, the Chaldeans, and you know what I'm saying? They took that around, right? We, American Indians, stayed here and did all three. So when all three come back home, Deuteronomy, right? That's probably the only thing that the Power Rangers on the corner got right. Deuteronomy, right? So when Deuteronomy happened and they come home in 1492 to America, we put it all back together. Okay? So, yes, Hoodoo. And what do I mean by that? So what in Hoodoo reflects Moorish and American Indian and Hebraic traditions? Well, drumming, for one. Drumming. Vibrations, frequencies. The drum was very important. The rhythm. All right. You know, like when you go to church, remember I taught y'all that they hid Hoodoo traditions inside of our churches, right? You remember when you was a kid, that tambourine get to shaking, that drummer get to drumming, old lady jump up and get to shouting, the hat flip off, she get to speaking in languages and tongues and shit. Yeah, that vibration got to her. She tuned in. Drumming. Call and response, prayer, and oral history. All right, oral history. Why is it hidden? You know, that's something that puzzles a lot of our people, even though sometimes when we know the answer, it still puzzles us. Why it was hidden, though? Why it was hidden? Colonial systems reclassified identity to justify slavery, break sovereignty, and erase land claims, them land patents, and your census records. Genealogy is key. Modern ramifications include redlining, profiling, and historical erasure. Black Americans ain't got no history. Y'all ain't got no culture. Y'all ain't never did nothing in America. They be saying all that shit while stopping at a stoplight. You guys ain't invent nothing in America. When the stoplight turn green, the car moves and their car automatically shifts gears. You guys ain't never did nothing in America. A lot of racist people's lives been saved because of transfusions and surgeries that we created. Right? Wintertime coming, you're able to cut your heater on because you have a radiator. Right? There's 15,000 inventions that they scrub from history, and they only teach our people 3 or 5 their whole life. Peanut Man, gas mask, which is the same damn person. One of them is the same person with like 2-3 inventions. So 15,000 inventions in the 1800s alone. Peep game. Black Americans have been inventing stuff in America for over 400 years in America. So we have inventions that go all the way back to the 16 and 1700s that people don't know about. Was the Wright brothers really white brothers? Or was they just white passing and light skinned brothers from North Carolina? Was a lot of these so-called white inventors, was they really white? Or was they white passing so they were able to get their inventions patent? Because, I mean, shit, if you can play the game, why not play the game? And a lot of our people played the game, those of white passing stature. Remember that book I read to y'all, The Miscegenation of White and Black People? And it told you that white people never invented nothing. You remember that Anacalypsis book I read to you when it says white people never invented nothing? They never originated nothing. So how can they be inventors of anything if they never originated nothing? So the final word, right? The final word. The Negro is not a color. The Negro is a misclassified Moor, a Sephardic, an Indian, wrapped in the chains of colonial semantics. And that quote comes from Muhammad Ali. See, a lot of people didn't even know Muhammad Ali said that. A lot of people think Muhammad Ali was, he was Afrocentric. He was Pan-African, pro-black. No, Muhammad Ali was Islamic. He was Muslim. He was a Moor. And he was an Indian from Louisville, Kentucky, who had one of the biggest Moorish science temples. Muhammad Ali said, the Negro is not a color. The Negro is a misclassified Moor or Sephardic, an Indian, wrapped in the chains of colonial Semitics, because they the same people. Black Americans are heirs to Kemet, Canaan, Al-Andalus, and America, with unity buried by empire. With unity buried by empire. The Black Americans are heirs. Heirs. This is the reason why they reclassified you and stripped your identity and don't want you to know your ancestry, because it ties you to not just America but multiple lands. You are heirs to Kemet, which is inside of America. Canaan, which is also inside of America. Al-Andalus, Iberian, in America, aka so-called Amaru, or Turtle Island for those. And with unity buried by an empire. Alright. Y'all good? We straight? For those who's just coming in, we are reading from my book I just released today. I'm just reading some pages inside the book to let y'all know what's inside of it. If y'all want to cop the ebook, the link is in the bio. I got some dope stuff in here, as y'all can see already. I got some dope stuff in here. So if y'all want to check it out, I'm writing books in terms that our people can understand, and with proof and policies. And these books are definitely kid friendly. So if you got teenagers, we will continue. Just give me 1 second. We're gonna let it breathe, as we call it. So peace. Y'all good though? Y'all straight? Y'all enjoying the live? Making sense? Connecting dots? Oh, excuse me. Just making sure y'all rocking with it. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, though. Thank y'all for the likes, the love. Anacalypsis in America, we are unveiling in America. Alright? We having a revelation in America. We are waking up in America to who we really are and to my we good. Mic check. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. It shouldn't be. We've been in the same spot all day. Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Probably gotta leave and come back and see if that works. good? We good now? Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. We good? Good on your end, GMP? Cool, cool. Anybody else? We good on anybody else end? Mic check 1 2 1 2. Is the live good for anybody else? What's that anymore? Peace, peace. Says good for you, 9 Ether. Good for you, Mr. Fresh. I gotta know if I get back. You said better. You had to restart the phone. Okay. All right, so let's continue though. What's that in Mark 1 Knowledge? Them boys tripped on me, boy. I can't advertise my ebook. As soon as I flip to my ebook, boy, the live start glitching bad. We been cool this whole time until I tried to show y'all, you know what I'm saying, the ebook. That's wild. Look, y'all want it, the link in the bio, TikTok be tripping. So, peace. So now we getting into black Sephardic eyes, right? The so-called black Sephardics or Sephardics. You ain't got to throw the black on it, right? What's that, pal? So, Sephardics or so-called black Sephardics refer to individuals of so-called African, right, Moor descent who identify as or descend from Sephardic Jews, right, Jews from the Iberian Peninsula, right, Spain and Portugal, who were expelled during the Inquisition in the late 15th century and dispersed throughout North Africa, Middle East, and the Caribbean and the Americas. This term encompasses a complex of intersections of identity, history, and diaspora and religious tradition. So who are these Sephardics, right? We already broke down Moors, American Indians, but Sephardics ain't really talked about enough, right? So who are Sephardics? Or Sephardites is the Hebrew word for Spain. Sephardic Jews trace their roots to Jewish communities in the Iberian Peninsula before 1492 Alhambra Decree and 1497 expulsion from Portugal. After the expulsion, many fled to North Africa. Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Libya became Moors. The Ottoman Empire, including the Middle East and Balkans, right? Moors, because remember what we learned, Sephardics and Moors, the same people, right? They also Moor, right? So in the Caribbeans, in Latin America, right? The book I told y'all, Blackness in the Caribbean. So in the Caribbeans and Latin America, Jamaica, Suriname, Brazil, and Cuica, or Cuica. So melanated Sephardic use, identity, and routes. One, North African use with African or Moorish lineage. Sephardim settled in North Africa and intermarried with the local Berbers, right? Moors, right? That's that African lineage, the Moors, the Berbers. So these are Sephardics and Berbers, right? And other little African people. So now communities blended Sephardic literary with indigenous practices. All right. Are we good? Is the live tripping? Can y'all still hear me? Okay, cool. I just thought it was tripping. All right. So when you get to the African Americans, right, so-called African Americans, rediscovering the Sephardic roots, right? So when you talk about rediscovering Sephardic roots in so-called African Americans, some African Americans trace lineage to Afro-Caribbeans or Latin American ancestors with hidden Jewish ancestry, right? Sephardic. Some black communities, right, Hebrew Israelites, claim descent from ancient Israelites. Black Jews in Iberia, pre-expulsion, possible presence of Jews of African descent, Moors, in Iberia due to Moorish, right, populations. Modern communities, Jamaican Jews, one of the oldest Jewish communities in the Western Hemisphere with African Jewish ancestry, right? Moorish Jewish ancestry, because the Moors and the Jews got sent in the Caribbeans together, right? So dodge the hijack with the African. Suriname, early Jewish plantations with enslaved Africans who later adopted Judaism, right? In Suriname, right? Moors, right? And Carcoa, they have a strong Sephardic presence influencing Black and Creole communities, which Black and Creole are the same people. So the identity and race in Judaism, Black Sephardics challenge Western racial binaries and highlights diversity within the Jewish identity, intersection of Judaism, race, and colonial history, in reclaiming religious and ancestral identities suppressed by conversion, slavery, and assimilation. All right. And that right there is where we're in at for right now. Okay. So we'll end that right there. Man, shout out to everybody that's in here. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Shout out to everybody that's in here. So y'all enjoyed that read? It was very educational and informational. Y'all understood it through and through. It connects some dots for you. You had a aha moment. Appreciate that. Thank you. Just wanted to cover some bases with it. What's happening, King Wash? Peace. Appreciate it, Mr. Fresh. And that's just the first chapter of the book. Right? That's just the first chapter. Like, once you open a book, you get through the Anacalypsis definition, boom, there you go. You're breaking it all the way down. No whole bars. right? We started off with connecting Walter Plicker Reclassifications Racial Integrity Act with the identity of American Indians, Sephardics, and Moors, right? Then we connect that with the 1950s termination policy of over 100 so-called black Indian tribes, and they went through displacement to urban locations, right? And now they're called urban Indians, hint, hint. And then 6 years later, we deal with another Relocation Act of 1956, and they relocate the rest of the American Indians to the urban areas with the rest of the urban Indians. Now, the only problem is the people that call us Waibo and Pretendians are reservation Indians. So these aren't urban Indians. Who is the urban Indian? People should be asking. Now, from 1956, 4 years later, you end up in 1960s, which is the beginning of the civil rights nickname Indian civil rights movement that later on gets hijacked. And what I mean by it gets hijacked is stop being about sovereignty and start being about racial issues. Okay? So, we connected all those dots. And then, we also dived into a little Sephardic and more in American Indian connections and history, talked about hoodoo a little bit, made some connections with that. And it's pretty dope. Hold on. Okay. You feel me? You always teach something new. I have learned a lot. Great work. I appreciate that, TR. Thank you. So yeah, so we got it in today. Today was a nice live. For those who missed it, I posted on YouTube, and they'll get the notification there. And they can rewatch it or however they want to do it. But we'll talk more about it. We'll dive deep more as the days go on, and as we start to shake this shadow. Thank you for the gift. Appreciate that. Thank you. Appreciate that. But with that being said, though, y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna close it down right there for today. About to try and go grab me something to eat. I don't know if y'all heard, but my stomach done growled a few times on live. You feel me? But I'm gonna go ahead and shut it down right there. I still gotta make some videos, chop up some videos, upload some stuff on YouTube and everything like that. And then I see y'all tomorrow. Cushion coffee in the morning. Y'all know how we get down. Roll it if you got it. Vibrate high. And always do your genealogy. Genealogy is key. And always teach the kids, because the kids is the future. And we got to protect them at all costs. Their consciousness, their soul, their spirit, and their mentality, right? So, that being said, enjoy the rest of y'all day, y'all night. I'll see y'all in these TikTok streets. Peace.